This week, what I'm going to be talking about is something that you may have thought about before, but potentially not either. What I'm really going to be talking about is if you're in situations where you're having to negotiate across your ecosystem. So you're a business owner, you lead a function, or you're a director or a leader. And what I mean by ecosystem is you've got a bunch of external stakeholders, clients, customers, partners, government, and you've got a bunch of internal stakeholders, staff, resources, functions, different people you've got to coordinate to deliver your external result to your clients. There's two ways of thinking about how you negotiate when you've got limited resources. Here's my idea, which is as we go into the future and we face big challenges and threats like we are right now, we cannot negotiate with a win-lose mindset. We have to start thinking differently about how we negotiate and how we do deals across those ecosystems so that things are more sustainable and so the outcomes are more sustainable for you and for them. And so we can use the environment in a different way. I see two big forces happening over the next period of time. One is digitization and the other there is climate change. And one of the skills we're going to need is this ability to be able to negotiate with abundance rather than scarcity. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. So let's without further ado, talk you through how to do it for yourself. Here we go. Just before we do that, look, if you want help if you've got groups of leaders who need help to be able to lead across their ecosystem and how they operate, or you need help yourself with your team, just get in touch. You can either do that by contacting me directly through social media, or just send me an email and we can have a quick chat to see if there's a good fit. Just remember what we're doing here is we're looking at leadership skills for the future. So if I look at the things we're covering, a bunch of things that we're going to need in this sort of post-pandemic world when digitization, automation is upon us, and then we're also got the challenge with climate change as that occurs as well, which we all know about. So what are we going to need then? I've covered decision making, head, heart, gut, when to really get into that sort of that intuitive space. I've talked about the importance of design and empathy in those design processes early on in a project and how to do that. And I've talked about the ability to influence and educate someone by answering 4 key questions of, if you remember, why, what, how, so what, if you watched last week. What we're going to talk about this week is the idea of negotiation, okay, and how to negotiate with abundance. So let's have a look at that. Here's what we've covered so far. So there's really 2 ways that you can think about negotiation. The first one is a scarcity mindset. So I'm just going to go through what a scarcity mindset is. So if you think about you're in a situation where you're having to negotiate with a customer or a client, and think about how you tend to be thinking as you enter in the room or you're on the phone when you have the conversation. A scarcity mindset says that I need to get a kind of short-term result. And by the way, I'm not arguing that that scarcity mindset or win or lose negotiations don't have their place. They absolutely do have their place when resources are finite or time is finite. So for example, if you've got to get out of a burning building because it's on fire, you don't need to probably negotiate too much about that. Extreme example, but you get what I mean, yeah? So scarcity mindset is short term, it's win at all costs, which is if I win, you lose. And it's often ROI focused. So how do I maximize the utility for my entity through this conversation? And typically it's when resources are finite or time's finite, as I've just explained. So the difference with that and an abundance mindset is abundance mindset tends to focus more on how do we build a solution where everyone gets what they need. Let's make an assumption that actually there is a way of doing this that benefits everyone. and it's probably sustainable. So it's much more of a balanced scorecard approach that benefits all stakeholders. So if we think about that scarcity approach, the way we tend to run our negotiations is win-lose. So in doing that, we'll create arm's length relationships with partners and suppliers. We'll try to focus on getting things done with less time. There'll be binary outcomes that have later consequences. So by pushing the negotiation to a close, it will have unintended consequences later that we haven't planned for. It's much more competitive focused, and it excludes people out of the process that don't help us get the outcomes we want. So if you look at much more of a win-win, it's thinking of all parties as a team. How do we work together to get a systemic solution that helps meet everyone's needs? It can take more time, but it ultimately has a more sustainable outcome and is more collaborative in the way it works. We cannot, this is my opinion rather than fact, but I believe we need more of the abundance way of negotiating in the world rather than the scarcity way of working in the world. Now, if you want to do more of this abundance type negotiation, this is how. I want you to think about how you engage prior to having conversations with those parties in your ecosystem. Do you understand the needs of everyone before you have the conversations? When you are designing potential solutions for how you work together, do you co-design those with all stakeholders in mind, or do you just do it with a limited set of stakeholders? Do you kind of think about or model the consequences of the benefits of each approach? Because the thing about a scarcity mindset is often when you go down a very limited viewpoint and you don't meet the needs of everyone, those that are excluded will impact the relationship, or it'll impact your ability to do business with them the next time. So do you model the consequences of benefits to everyone in your ecosystem before you choose your potential solution? And then do you make a mutual decision where you grab a group of people together and say, let's test and implement this potential solution and see if it works? Again, I believe that we need to do more abundance type negotiation rather than scarcity negotiation. What I would love to hear from you is, with a negotiation or a conversation that you've got to have this week, how could you take a more abundance type approach to that conversation? And let me know in the comments, or just give me a ring. Let me know the outcome you got. Love your work. Talk to you soon. Cheers.